Monsieur Anber.
Monsieur Cassava, what is happening, my brother?
Good evening. You sound even better than the last time we spoke, which was about 10 days ago on the podcast with Mike Rodriguez, was the cutman for Marcus Browne for the big Beterbiev Browne fight in Montreal that you had to unfortunately miss due to your COVID positive result. You still were able to do the show. You're still able to yell. And I think you're feeling even better, if I'm not mistaken here, about 10 days removed or so.
It's getting better, I have to say. I still got the cough. The cough was was problematic. For a couple of days, I was coughing so much and so hard that I actually physically hurt myself. I hurt my back. I hurt my stomach. I hurt my head was shaking every time I coughed. My brain was shaking inside my skull. That was pretty bad, and I still have the lingering effects of it. So if I do have to clear my throat every now and then, forgive me. But yeah, that's not a nice thing. But I'm glad at least I was vaccinated and probably saved me from certain hospitalization.
And we have joining us the regular guest we haven't spoken to in a little while, but somebody that I saw throughout the week, fight week in the bubble in Montreal, and that is Iceman John Scully, finally back home after a long training camp and a big win for Artur Beterbiev on the performance against Marcus Browne, of course, to retain his titles. Ice, how you doing?
Everything is great. How you doing?
Happy to be back home, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because at one point, Russ,
nothing against Montreal.
I
said Montreal.
Yeah. At one point, the last we spoke, Russ, and this is the last podcast of 2021. When we spoke a few days before, or even 48 hours before the big fight between Beterbiev and Marcus Browne, all of us were kind of on pin and needles. We had, of course, the COVID testing from everyone to see if everything would go through. They started canceling a bunch of sports shows in Montreal, and we really were fortunate to have probably the last big event before all fans now have been kind of banned from the Bell Center since the win. And me and Scully were kind of hoping the fight would go through. I was lucky to be part of the undercard for a few fights, work with Maslow McDennis for his win, work with Steve Rolls in the corner as well for his win on ESPN. But the big one was Arthur, and we'll get to that on this show. We'll also set up a little bit of the big storylines for 2022, because I know, Russ, you want to talk about Usyk, and there's some George Kambosos news as well in the lightweight division. So, Ice, we're still, when we spoke after the fight and we saw in the locker room a little bit here, and you were saying that was like some Gaddy Ward performance, because everybody, I think, who watched Beterbiev for the first time in America and others who had seen him a little bit, but this might have been his coming out performance considering the level of opponent and the adversity in front of him, and being able to still come up with a big knockout victory.
Right. I mean, I can imagine it must have been amazing to watch on TV.
It was not. No, it was not amazing, because I was more nervous watching on TV than I was if I'd have been in the dressing room. I was going just absolutely ballistic. I did not sit down for 1 second. I was stood up in front of the TV the entire time. I can't even tell you the last time I stood up and was watching a fight on TV where I was like, my heart was in that fight. Anyways, I'm sorry.
Well, there you go. Well, that's what I'm saying. It was that kind of fight. And, it was probably the closest thing we've seen recently to a Rocky movie. Like you would watch that, and if you stopped the film 30 seconds after the cut and said, what do you think happened? Anybody in boxing would have said they're going to stop the fight. The fight's not going to go more than one more round. And this guy fights through it. And Arthur, people say he's like a machine, and I get it. like he literally, it was like he just ignored it. It was just a blip in the radar. He just ignored it. I mean, he was so focused that, what's it going to take to slow Arthur down? I don't know. I have no idea.
And Russ, just so people understand, there was, of course, the massive cut that Russ, have now even kind of said on social media, called out Marcus Browne because of the fact that you were with Badu Jack when that happened, and many of his last opponents, seems like the headbutts are almost intentional. So you were at home and dealing with the fact that Luc Vincent Ouellet, who's also an excellent cut man, but now was put on the spot really with dealing with a massive cut right off the get-go, which you would have been tending to had you been in the corner.
I never thought I swear this, after the Badu fight, which the Badu cut was even worse because he took 96 stitches after the fight. I mean, if you look at the pictures, I have it on my phone. I got to find it so that I can bring it up and put them side by side. But I never thought in my life I'm going to see a cut like that again. Like you say, oh, great, you learn from experience. And I figured, well, this was a useless experience because you're never going to see that cut, with an axe job right down the front of the head. Like, you're not going to see that. Then I'm not allowed to be there because of COVID. And what happens? The same bloody cut that happened in the Badou Jack fight.
And I'll tell you, right? Like right off the get-go, and right off the get-go, not even later.
Early in the fight as well. And, I knew when it was bleeding, I knew that Luke, who, like you said, did a great job in the corner of tending to the cut. He got to it. He did everything right. But there's just some times, and I experienced this, you do everything that's right, and it doesn't mean it's going to stop. And it just kept going, and it just kept bleeding. And in response to what Scully said, the cut, I think, in a way, I don't want to say it was a good thing, but when I heard the doctor say one more round, it's as if a fire was lit under Arthur's ass, and he just turned it on way quicker than we expected him to. Because up until the cut, he was just kind of following Marcus around and not much was going on. When the cut happened, now he was putting punches together. He was throwing. He was in desperation mode to blast this guy out of there. So it had the makings for a great Hollywood script, and we saw it here. And Beterbiev is a beast.
But Ice, did you think that, because referee Michael Griffin, who we've had on the podcast before, Russ, and we've known for a long time, he's a former fighter himself, so he knows kind of the dynamic there and is considered one of the better referees, not just, of course, in this country, but across the world. Did you get any indication that he was going to stop the fight early? What was the communication like in the corner when that could happen? Because if it was ruled by a headbutt, it would have been a technical no contest, pardon me, within the first 4 rounds.
Right. I didn't get the impression he was in a big hurry to stop it. I got the impression he was willing to let this play out. And I'm so glad he did. I think as a referee, that was like referees don't get a lot of opportunities to really set themselves apart or be a part of something, to stand out. But, he's going to be remembered by me anyway. He let that fight play out. And I give him all the credit in the world. He understood the game and what was at stake. And, and this is fighting. This is what happened. This happens in a fight. And I'm really glad we had him as a referee. I'm glad he's as capable as he actually is.
You know what? That's a really good point. Fighters don't use referees don't get to distinguish themselves and make in the heat of the moment calls, which make for a great night of boxing. And I think Jack Reese. I'll criticize Jack Reese sometimes, but I'll give him credit when he deserves it. And when he allowed Tyson Fury to stand up after the optics appeared that he was down for dead. In the second fight, in the first fight with Wilder, and as a referee kept his calm about him, and he counted it, and he got up, and he let him go, and Fury almost technically comes back and wins that round. Really, if you say for the knockdown, he hits Wilder more than he gets hit. So, and I think I echo those sentiments that Griffin separated himself from good referee to great referee on that night, and he let the fight play out. And it's funny because he's been there before, and I bet if we asked him, he'll tell you this story. When we had him on the show, Matt, I think he told us this story of when Arturo Gatti fought Joe Hutchison.
That's right.
Here in Montreal.
He felt the pressure. The pressure.
Now, Scully, you figured you can relate to this. Arturo Gatti's coming home for the first time to ever fight as a pro in Montreal after having been on the world stage and now was a super big star. So he comes into town, and I'm not sure if there was a clash of hands, but Gatti gets busted open. He's split, but it wasn't as a result of a headbutt. He didn't call it a headbutt. So he kept taking him to the referee, to the doctor, to see if he should stop the fight. And the doctor says, no, let it go, keep going. And because he knows that if they stop the fight, Gaddy's going to lose the fight, on a TKO.
Yeah.
And so he let the fight go. So I'm sure he thought about that in the fight, especially when the doctor said to him, "Oh, one more round." He must have thought to himself, "I'm not taking him back to the doctor again. I'm not going to take him back to the doctor because I don't want the doctor to make the call. I want to be the one to make the call." And I think that was the key moment in the fight to say, you want to, if Marcus was to win the fight or Artur was to lose it, it was going to be in the ring and not because a ringside physician panicked because he saw blood and called the fight. So that was a brilliant, brilliant call to not go back to the doctor.
Well, do you think, Ice, because Russ pointed out that he's convinced that Marcus Browne intentionally is headbutting opponents, and there's people who watch and were tuning into the bout against Beterbiev who believe that Browne caused a headbutt, not the headbutt, pardon me, but caused a cut with a punch and not a headbutt. Do you have any doubt in your mind that that was caused by a punch or a headbutt? And what was the ruling? Like, if the fight was going to be stopped, had they ruled it officially a headbutt?
I'll be honest, I have not watched the fight yet on tape. So, in the heat of the moment, I don't know what caused it. I didn't see, things happen so fast. And a lot of times you don't see the cut until 20 seconds after it actually happens. It dawns on you that something's wrong. So I can't really say. I have not watched the replay.
Guarantee it was a headbutt because when the replay showed on TV, both of the guys ended up getting cut at the same time. Artur got the worst of it, I guess, down the front, and Marcus got it on the side. So there was the clash of heads, and the ref and both Marcus, confirmed that he said something to the referee, and Mike Griffin answered him back. So they saw right away that it was a headbutt. It was not a punch that caused it. Now there was a punch that landed at some point, but it was the cut. It was the little sliding headbutt that caused that to split open.
Well, and look, and Artur kept coming forward, Ice, like you talked about. It was almost that type of motivation. He just went an extra gear despite so much blood pouring down. And after a few rounds, Luke and the cut started to get a little bit more under control. And then towards the end of the fight, apparently Michael Griffin, according to Mark Ramsey, the head coach of Artur, was being told that they might, give it one more round max. And then Artur really went all out, stops Marcus Browne with, devastating body shots. And people look at it in the performance, and there's kind of two ways to see it. They say, well, because Artur showed vulnerability, he's going to get maybe more options now. People are going to be more inclined to fight him. And then others say, well, if he can fight the way he did with that type of cut for that many rounds, it just shows just how dangerous. Where do you stand on one of those two sides, Ice?
Well, I mean, he showed a vulnerability to headbutts, which I think everybody's kind of vulnerable to that. So I don't think he showed vulnerability in terms of, like difficulty. I mean, Marcus Browne could be a difficult opponent, but Artur had an answer for everything. He was cutting him off. He was making Browne miss a lot of punches. And for me, probably my biggest question mark or fear even going in was, this is Artur's time now. He's fighting a slick guy, flashy guy, fast hands. And, how's he going to react to the speed difference? And, I think Artur's defense, if people thought he was just a plotter and a face first guy, I think they should have a different viewpoint now, because he was slipping. Slipping a lot of punches, which he looked good doing. And he blocked a lot of punches. I'm sure Browne wasn't pleased with his, connect percentage. For sure. So I think Artur, it's amazing, but in offensively, defensively, heart-wise, just in every area, he showed something, I think, that answered a lot of questions for a lot of people.
I'd have to say that this was, despite the cut, this was from a technical perspective, this was his finest performance in a few years. I mean, this certainly was better than the performance when he won the title in California. It was certainly better than the performance in Russia in March, and it was certainly a better technical performance than the fight against Hot Rod in California. Although he won that fight and stopped him early, this was a superior fighter in Marcus Browne, a tough, resilient guy, big guy, southpaw, and I thought Artur showed himself to be the complete package in the fight. I think it's his best performance in a couple of years, no doubt about it.
Well, look, he's the only undefeated champion. Forget undefeated. He's the only champion with 100% knockout ratio, even though he's approaching his late 30s. And he's not a big personality outside the ring of wanting to be vocal about possible matchups. He has a great personality, and I thought ESPN and Top Rank did a great job in the feature. If you haven't seen it yet on YouTube, the man who could beat Canelo. I thought it showed his personality outside the ring. He's a great guy, and of course, in the ring is one of the most exciting fighters out there. But I thought it was interesting that Andre Ward, part of ESPN broadcast team now, former super middleweight champion of the world, undefeated, and who, of course, will be in the Hall of Fame one day, he tweeted out, during the fight that Beterbiev looks very beatable. And Ice, Andre Ward very well from having been in the opposite corner with Chad Dawson in that mega fight against Ward a few years ago. What did you make of Andre Ward's comments? Do you think it's going to attract possibly a big name fight for Artur Beterbiev, or do you think it's easy for Andre to say now that he's in the comfort of the booth, the broadcast booth?
You could watch anyone fight and say he looks beatable. A guy gets caught. Guys get caught. In a bad round. They don't have a perfect round. Yeah, he looks beatable. Well, everybody looks beatable at some point. I mean,
But everybody is beatable.
Right. I mean,
everybody is
beatable. Right. And Roy Jones, even in his greatest days, you could look at a round here and there and go, hey, look beatable. Well, yeah, but who's going to do it? Who's going to do it over 12 rounds? I mean, sticking around with Artur for 12 rounds is not a fun thing. That's, it's the type of guy to do that. Hey, he's beatable, but who's going to do it? Who out there is going to do it? Joe Smith, I like Joe Smith, but, I would say no chance, like no chance, so I don't know.
I found it a little, in my opinion, very cheap shottish to take a shot at Artur fighting the way he fought against the caliber of opposition he's fighting. And out of all the things you could possibly say, the only thing that you decide to tweet is he looks beatable. Like, you don't say how he's fighting through it, his heart, his courage. You don't talk about anything about that. The only thing you can come up with to think about is, he looks beatable. Please stop. And that bothered me a lot that he said that, because I have a lot of respect for Andre. And he usually says really good things in his commentary. I find his commentary really good, very educated, very analytical. For him to have said that was, just out of left field for no reason other than hate. That's it.
Well, a lot of people commented, like they posted it on my page, on my Facebook page, and people were saying, he's like, I'll tell you what, they attacked Andre Ward. Boxing fans attacked him on Twitter. Like, it was harsh. Like, people were like, yeah, he looked beatable, just like you did when Kovalev dropped you like a ton of bricks, and and then they were saying how he's saying it because that way, if Canelo beats Beterbiev, it'll look a certain way. I don't know, I don't really know the logistics of it, but they were saying that he was planning ahead just in case Artur lost to Canelo, it would make him look like a prognosticator. So who knows? I mean, there could be ulterior motives.
Well, then it's funny. It's funny what guys who hate fighters, like the Loma hate train is just so disgusting. Overrated. He lost to a guy who had 10 losses. Lost to Salido. All this negative shit. You keep saying that stuff. Guy runs off 40 wins, finally loses, and says, "See, I told you he was beatable. I told you." Stop, please. Stop. Just stop.
This is the new age we're living in. And if you were going to put up a list of fights in 2022 that boxing fans, the real hardcore fans, want to see, Beterbiev and Canelo might be right on top of that list. Like, it's easily in the top 3 matchups that people want to see. Ice, what's your gut feeling after Beterbiev's win? He's not getting any younger. Do you think Canelo elects to fight him and really challenges himself as now he's a super middleweight champion, but does he challenge himself in going with the guy that everybody seems to be afraid to fight in Beterbiev?
I mean, I don't know why. I wouldn't blame him if he didn't. You look at that fight, you're a super middleweight, you're a former middleweight. He may have even been, I think he might have been junior middleweight even before that.
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't blame a guy for not wanting to fight Artur, a smaller guy. Artur's a beast. But it seems to me, he won the light heavyweight title with Kovalev. He drained Kovalev, made him lose all the weight and everything. Then he wouldn't let him regain the weight. And so there's an asterisk next to that. And then he goes back down immediately. And now he's talking about going up to cruiserweight, skipping light heavyweight. So obviously, clearly, like if it looks like a duck, it's a duck. Clearly, his mindset is avoiding Artur. Now, if he fights him, I'm going to have to assume they're going to want Artur to, only use one arm and, fight with his eye closed or whatever stipulations they want to put. And I hope Artur doesn't go by it. And I would say, I'm the light heavyweight champion. If you want to beat me, you have to beat me, not the watered down version of me. Because, I had forgotten that he did that to Kovalev, or he wouldn't let Kovalev rehydrate. I forgot he did that. And I had a lot of respect for Canelo beating Kovalev. Now I don't. When I realize what he did, when I really think about it, it's coward, it's horrible. And people don't call him out on that. It's not right.
Wow. So two things can be true then. Canelo can be the pound for pound best fighter and an excellent fighter and a great one, but he can also be very opportunistic and smart in his matchmaking of who he fights, when he fights them, because a lot of people felt the same, that he kind of waited till Triple G showed signs of decline before accepting that fight, and kind of taking a page of the Mayweather playbook, who Mayweather showed later on in his career. He would decide fights and who he would fight and make it all to his advantage. So do you think there's some truth to that Canelo can be a great fighter, but also at the same time be opportunistic in who he fights and how he fights them?
100%. And listen, I like Canelo. I think he's great. His skills, you can't deny his skills in any way, shape, or form. But again, fighting Kovalev and making it so he can't rehydrate. People may not realize, like they may just brush that off, not realizing what that really means. That's horrible. That's horrible to have to go through and then to have to fight Canelo. So in hindsight, I say, no wonder he knocked him out. He didn't let the guy, so it's not just physical, it's mental, it's psychological, the restrictions that he put on this guy. And then you go, oh, well, yeah, see, I beat him. It's like, man, it's like saying I could beat Mike Tyson if he ties his feet together, and he can't move properly during the fight. But yeah, I beat Tyson. I outboxed him.
But he did something else.
The restrictions I put on.
Scully, he did something else. When they made the match, it was immediately after him going through a life and death fight in the UK with Anthony Yarde, in which, if I'm not mistaken, he might have been dropped. And if he wasn't dropped, he was certainly hurt. And he was in a really tough fight and banged around badly. And they flipped it right away and said, okay, fighting Kovalev in 2 months. So he had to get over that beating that he took in England, even though he won the fight. It was a very physically demanding fight on him, and he took a lot of punishment and threw him right back in the ring and then said, you can't rehydrate. So he is using all the powers that he has to call the shots, because if Kovalev would have said, nah, I don't want that. I want to wait 2 months before, then you're just passed over in the lottery and you don't get to cash in on the payday, because that's what he dictates. He dictates those terms because he can. And people are going to have to start saying, no, you're not just going to do it on your terms and pass on the money. But nobody wants to pass on that money because it's not something they can replace somewhere else. It'll take a man of principle and a man of character like Artur to stand up to him. And he's the guy who can do that.
Yeah. Well, look, that's the fight.
The sanctioning body. Why doesn't the sanctioning body president say, listen, the fight is 175. Our title is 175 pounds. You can't come in and make your own weight class. There's no such thing as, not regain. There's no such thing as whatever you're trying to do. It's not right. And it takes away from the legacy. Whichever,
I think
whoever it is, in any given situation, these stipulations, it's not right. Like, it's not right to me. It's not right at all.
Well, the IBF, I believe, is the only one that has in their rules for everyone rehydration clause. Like that, I think is, but it's still, I believe, 10 pounds, the limit that you can. So that one's clear. But then when you make other stipulations, like you said, Ice, that go different than that, and the sanctioning body should not go along with it. But it remains to be seen. And Russ, if I were going to ask you, in 2022 or in the future, let's even forget 2022, but who has a better chance of fighting Canelo, Usyk or Beterbiev?
It's funny.
A lot of people talk about Usyk now.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I watched the DAZN crew get into a big argument on the AJ and Barack show with Chris Mannix, and Chris Mannix is saying, Canelo should move up and fight Oleksandr Usyk. And they're saying, what are you talking about, man? The guy's 225 pounds, Yeah, but he can come down in weight. He can lose 20 pounds. And like it's nothing. They're talking about it like it's nothing. Like Canelo can go from 168 to 200, no problem. Yeah, sure. Just go. Look at Roy Jones. He moved up and went from 175 to 200 pounds and fought John Ruiz. Yeah, he went up to 200. That was what he reached at 175. Canelo started boxing like when he was 15, he was 140 pounds. There's a big difference between Usyk but again, like John said, the stipulations could come into play again. And Usyk has said he's ready to take that challenge on. And I believe he would be ready to take it on.
We talked about this, Russ, weeks ago. I brought up the fact when the Canelo Macaboo news, because it looks like he's going to fight for the WBC cruiserweight belt next. Like, it's not been confirmed, but that's kind of what the WBC wants. And Canelo could then claim to have won another weight class against a limited fighter, but a bigger guy. And then theoretically, Usyk was the cruiserweight champion before, has the WBC belt. Canelo could, try a challenge for the heavyweight title and then call it a day with the amount of millions he's made in his career. So I understand where that's coming from, but I think fans would rather see Canelo challenge Dimitri Bivol, fight Artur Beterbiev at once, maybe fight the Charles at 168, the Demetrius Andrade. I think those are the fights fans would rather see than Canelo move up to these crazy matchups at the bigger weight classes. Ice, do you agree?
Yeah, realistic stuff. I think that I don't think real boxing fans, to me, don't want to see the circus fights. The weird fights. That's like to draw other people in. It's, oh wow, he's fighting heavyweight. I want legitimate, real fights, realistic fights that really impact one division. And I don't, in that regard, I'm not a fan of the way boxing is obviously going at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's some other big matchups 2022. While we're on the topic of Usyk, Russ, there's been talks now. It looks like maybe April for the Joshua rematch. Of course, Tyson Fury, the other heavyweight champion, is in the mix. Like, what do you think plans are? Have you spoken to Usyk or his team? What do you think 2022? Because Usyk, a lot of people are going to look forward. I think the Joshua rematch might be a much bigger fight now than the first fight between the two was, going into it.
Well, look, I know for a fact that the real interest is Fury. The unification is the fight that should be made. And I don't know why it's not being made, because
of a rematch clause, no?
Well, they could get by the rematch clause. They just have to come to an agreement. They could get by the rematch clause. I don't see that that's an issue. And I also don't see how it even hurts Joshua in any way. In A, he would get step aside money. B, he's going to get a shot at either Fury or Usyk. So he either gets his rematch or gets a chance to challenge in an even bigger fight, against Tyson Fury. I think the onus here is a little bit on Fury on this one as to why you're thinking about fighting Andy Ruiz, and Robert Helenius when you have a shot at fighting Usyk and unifying the title. And he just says, I don't care about belts. I don't give a shit about belts. Belts don't mean anything to me. Well, okay, but that's the fight to me that should be made. Like, you have an opportunity to make a unification fight, just like we had the opportunity of making Fury against Joshua for the unified titles, and it got all disrupted because we needed to see Wilder get his ass kicked again, because we needed to see that. And instead of there being a unified heavyweight champion. And now again, we have the opportunity to do that, and we're passing on that. And I think that's wrong, because I think certainly everybody knows there's going to be money there. There's more money for Usyk versus Fury than there would be against Ruiz or Robert Helenius. I mean, I that's a no-brainer.
Ice, don't you think it's going to be intriguing to see how the heavyweight landscape shapes up in 2022? Because if Fury kind of waits, it doesn't look like he wants to fight his mandatory Dillian White. They can't come to terms. He might wait to see what happens in the Joshua rematch with Usyk. Like, the heavyweight division, though, has brought back excitement and credible fighters in the last few years.
Right. Oh, I'll be honest. This is the first time this last year or so with Wilder and Fury and Joshua. This is the first time I've paid any attention to heavyweights and Usyk. This is the first time I've paid any attention to heavyweights in probably 10, 15 years. This is the first time I've paid any attention at all.
And Dillian White shouldn't be the mandatory anyways. He shouldn't get a shot at the title. So he should be the guy that everyone just dismisses, because he's already been a cheater. He already cheated with the gloves against Rivas. He already cheated with his sample. He got knocked out by Povetkin, comes back and beats Povetkin, which in my opinion makes them one each. Why doesn't Povetkin get the rematch?
I don't think it's your opinion, Russ. I think it's fact that it's 1-1. I don't think it's an opinion, right?
What's that?
I don't think you said it's my opinion that it's 1-1. I think if each man has won a fight, I don't think it's an opinion. I think
it's a fact. It's a fact. That's right. Yeah. So in my opinion, why isn't there a third one?
Why is Povetkin retired?
That's not the point. I don't know if he retired or didn't retire. Yes, maybe he did. But all of a sudden, you erase that and he's the mandatory again. Based on what? On what? On beating Povetkin? Like that's how you became the mandatory? No, that's listen, there are much better fights to be made than Dillian White.
Yeah, well, look, I can't wait to see, because I think the Joshua Usyk rematch is going to be exciting. If that fight does happen, can Usyk win convincingly? Can Joshua be more aggressive? Everybody's hyping Joshua as he might change trainers. He might be this offensive go-out style. You're seeing videos of him already training. It's a massive matchup regardless, but eventually if you can have the crown unified champion, whether it's Usyk against Fury at some point in 2022, I think fans would be thrilled. And Usyk is just going to gain more popularity in North America, especially as people start to see his style in the ring is exciting, but he's got a great personality despite a bit of the language barrier as well.
Me or Scully?
Either or. If not, I got something else here that you're going to get excited about, Russ, I think, or maybe upset.
Usyk to me is a lot, in a way, a hidden gem in terms of his personality. Like a lot like Beterbiev, and like you said, they did a great job in exposing what a great personality and what a man of character Beterbiev is. And Usyk is that same type of guy. I hope they do that same kind of documentary and show the ascension to the heavyweight championship of the world of a simple guy like Oleksandr Usyk and how he became king in the amateurs and became king of heavyweight boxing as well, and cruiserweight, undisputed cruiserweight champion. I think there's a massive story to be told of just what an intriguing man this guy is.
100%. The big division that the social media boxing fan, the new age fans are really into is the lightweight division. We had some excellent fights in 2021. And then in 2022, we know how you feel, Russ, about Loma getting his shot. And George Kambosos this week, coincidentally, tweeted out, "Who do you want me to fight next?" to the fans. And 41% of the 40,000 plus votes came in for Lomachenko. 35% though for Devin Haney. And Kambosos and Haney have been going back and forth. And Kambosos is saying if Haney agrees to go to Australia, in Kambosos' home country, he'll get the fight. What do we make of the lightweight situation? We know it's going to be a good fight, but you haven't changed, right? Loma should be the guy. Do you think Loma would be willing to go to Australia, though? Because Kambosos is saying his next fight is in Australia.
So why wouldn't you say if Loma comes to Australia? Because Loma would go to Australia.
Well, we haven't heard it. Haney and Kambosos have been going back and forth, but Loma doesn't do social media. We haven't heard him.
But it's not the point. I'm saying you said that Kambosos said if Haney agrees to come to Australia, he'll fight Haney. He could have said, if Loma wants to come to Australia, right, I'll fight Loma.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm not going to change. I like George. I think he's a gutsy guy. I think he's an admirable fighter. I think he defied the odds in what he did with Lopez against a lot of heat as a massive underdog. He believed in himself, and he did. I don't, just because I like Loma and I work with Loma, don't misinterpret that I don't have any respect or don't like George, because I do. I think he's an outstanding fighter and an inspiration to the underdog for what he did. But the fight I want, Loma deserves that right. The king deserves his shot at the throne again. You know, he deserves that right. If anybody deserves it in boxing to be given a shot back, it should be him. And when I look back in history at fighters who have got rematches, fighters who have got knocked out and had rematches, and Loma can't get a rematch, can't get a title shot, it's unfathomable to even conceive that the best fighter of our generation, the best maybe since Roy Jones, doesn't get a shot at the title again. How is that possible? How? Doesn't make sense.
Scully, what fight do you want to see most in the lightweight division next year? Is it the Kambosos defense, or are you more interested in seeing Tank Davis against Ryan Garcia, for example?
I mean, there's so many interchangeable fights in that weight cut. You could name 3, 4, 5 fights, and like I could name one, and you go, yeah, it's gonna be good. I go, or you could have, and you go, oh, yeah, that's gonna be good. Like, but
they're all good. Yeah,
they're all good. I mean, Tank with anybody is gonna be exciting. I would like, me personally, I've always kind of leaned Tank and Loma. I thought the contrast in styles would be there. I could see, and on the one hand, I could see Loma playing with Tank, like Tank not being able to do anything, or I could see Tank catching Loma and hurting him and changing the dynamic. I mean, there's different things that could happen in that fight, and I think the buildup and the possibilities of what could happen would always, would create a great, for me personally, would create a lot of excitement. So for me personally, that's the fight. If I had to choose a fight, that would be the one.
Yeah, but you can't have that fight with no title. He doesn't have a title. You can't make it a 12-round non-title fight, with these two guys.
Well, that's the thing. Like, to me, I don't care. Like, to me, the fight is, like if you said Tank and Loma are fighting for the WBC title, I would say, okay. No, they're fighting for the WBA. It's okay. No, we can't. We're going to fight for the IBF. I said, listen, I don't care what you fight for. Because I'm not even going to pay attention. I just want to see you two punch each other a lot. That's what I want to see.
But listen, that's not really fair, because the business. Guys want to win the world title for whatever it's worth.
Money, Russ. It's prize fighting. They want to make the most money as well.
Obviously, well, you make the most money by having a world title fight. That's where you make your most money.
Not necessarily in this day and age.
But I want the name. I want to beat the name.
Yeah, but you see, I got to disagree with you guys on that one. I mean, of course you want to see them, and I'd rather see them fight as champion. If he beats Kambosos and wins the title and then defends against Tank Davis, absolutely. But why should these two guys have to fight each other while the belt holders, be it Kambosos or Haney, are sitting there, not watching these two guys have to beat each other up for no title? That's not right. That's not.
Who's Loma going to fight? So Loma should just do other fights that are not against.
Loma's done two. Loma's done two already. He's done Nakatani and he's done Richard Comey. He's already taken on
Russ,
two.
because he wasn't given the rematch. So let's say Kambosos elects to fight Haney. Why can't Loma and Tank Davis happen? Loma's just going to wait?
No, he's going to have to fight somebody.
Right. So that's what Ice is saying. It would be a great fight. It's going to attract great money, but it's a major risk to go into a fight like that without any titles. And I get that, but it's just going to see there's some along the way, there's going to be a landscape. Either they're not going to fight each other, or they're all going to wait because one guy is holding up all the belts. So that's going to be the interesting, I think, gauge for 2022. A few quick ones here because fans are excited about Crawford Spence 2022. Yes, no.
Yes,
I hope so.
Yes, I says it's going to happen, or yes, you want to see it.
Well, definitely want to see it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it would be a crime if it doesn't happen. Like, if these two guys find a way to not fight each other again, something's wrong. years are going by. They're losing, and, like even me, I'll tell you what, even as big a fight as Pacquiao and Mayweather was, by the time they fought, I can honestly look you in the face and tell you I didn't care at all about that fight. I didn't care one bit who won that fight because they lost me for like 6 years. They fooled around and they didn't fight. Now, Spence, it's almost like they don't even know each other exists. It's just crazy. Nobody they don't, it's like it's not going to happen. I get the impression it's not going to happen.
That's what I was just about to say. You said, yeah, you want to see it. You said you want to see it happen. Yeah. Okay. So do I. The over-under on me says it's not happening in 2022. And I think the Spence people are going to drag this out as long as they can, and until they see Crawford show serious signs of aging or being on the shelf, because right now he's not with Top Rank anymore. So we have to see where he's going to end up, who's going to be the promoter, what kind of fights he's going to be in, and just how much physical drain it's going to take on his body before Spence says, yeah, I'll fight him. Because like Scully said, this is a fight that should have been made. Like, it's crazy that you have the two best welterweights in the world and they're not fighting each other. It doesn't make sense.
Seems like it's a common theme with the welterweights, unfortunately, the last 20 years or so. They don't fight each other when they should be at their best. And Errol Spence might be fighting, I think from all indications, is that he's going to fight Usyk next. And that's not a walk in the park at all for Spence. And they're lining up Keith Thurman for him because Keith Thurman's making his comeback and to stay busy fighting. I think that's the direction they're going. They're going Spence against Usyk and then Spence against Thurman. Crawford is going to be left out a little bit in terms of the big money fights possibly at 147, but they can find some credible guys to fight him. And I think Crawford, and Russ, you've mentioned this before, he would be the favorite right now if they fought, and a legitimate favorite.
I think he's the best welterweight in the world right now.
Yeah, Ice, you agree?
Yes, 100%.
He's the most complete probably of all of them. And last one.
He showed a lot in the Porter fight. He showed a lot in the Porter fight. More than he's shown in the other fights against lesser opposition when the chips were down and he had to come from behind to come back against somebody like Porter, who's not an easy fight for anybody. That was a hell of a win.
We also might have the biggest women's boxing match we may arguably have ever had in Amanda Serrano against Katie Taylor. There's momentum for that in 2022. I'd love to see that fight as well. I don't know if Russ or Ice want to chip in at all with any interest to see Serrano against Katie Taylor for the belts.
I'll be honest. I'm not against, the female stuff. I've never seen either one of them fight. I've never been a big.
Come on, you haven't seen any of them fight, Ice?
Neither of them. I've never, I didn't even know what Serrano looked like until like 2 weeks ago. I saw a picture of her on the internet. I've never, I've worked with a few female fighters in the gym, and I trained a female world champion like 20 years ago. But, I just never really got into the female boxing on a deep level because, it just seems like there are good fighters, but it just seems like the talent pool in each weight class is very, very shallow. There's not a bunch of girls at welterweight.
Yeah, well, that I think is going to change over time as well, right? As equal representation. Oh.
But they're talking about like I don't like this. I really am against this. Like when they say, I think it was Clarissa Shields. I think she won 3 world titles in a certain amount of time, and they're saying she did it the fastest in history. I'm like, listen, she did it the fastest in women's history. You cannot compare her championships with Roberto. And people think I'm hating on women. I'm just hating on the game, the situation. It is insanity to compare them. It's not even, they're beating girls, their records are like, 9-4, and they're the defending world champion, and they're fighting for the title. And it's just, it's not their fault, but the talent pool is super, super, super shallow. And as a result, you cannot compare.
Well, I think Ice is
time with the amount of time it took Duran to take it. It's insane. It's an insult.
Well, Russ, you work with Jessica Camara against Callie Reese, was ended up being one of the big fights, and a lot of the women seem to be willing to face each other, the top women, so that's a plus. And Serrano, Katie Taylor would be a heck of a fight. I think you would.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Scully's right. Like, the talent pool is not great in any of the divisions. You know, there's not guys like where you have a division where, you know, three girls can there be champion, you know, given the opportunity. Any three can win the title. You know, it's the talent pool is definitely not there. But in this case, at least the two best of this era of female fighters is Serrano and Katie Taylor. And I think it's a fitting matchup to be made and should be made. And as far as the female fight scene goes, at least it's going to be two girls fighting the best there is at this time. And that at least can be said, that you're not fighting the empty talent pool.
Also, if that fight does end up being official, I'm a big believer that Amanda Serrano wins that fight. Remains to be seen. Final thing, maybe for 2022, if I were to ask you guys to complete this sentence, Jake Paul in 2022 will what? We're no interest in the circus, right, Scully, that you were talking about? He's knocking out has-been MMA fighters who go into boxing for paydays. So is he ever, because he's still calling out guys like Canelo and other boxers, thinking he's going to be able to attract them because of all the money, and ESPN had millions and millions of views when he knocked out Tyron Woodley a few weeks ago. We have no interest in Jake Paul to this day, right? Because Russ, I thought you were giving him credit as a fighter with some skills.
I didn't say I wasn't. I didn't say I wasn't.
You just gave him the F. You gave him the middle finger.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The whole dynamics of boxing has changed it now. He's getting into that position, like we said with Canelo, where Canelo can dictate and set the rules. He's doing the same thing because for some asinine reason, some false belief or something happened along the way that a guy is popular in something, YouTubing, whatever it was that he did, and transforms that fan base into people who are willing to buy tickets to watch him fight non-competitive fights against guys who shouldn't be boxing anyways. And it's generating the millions of views that you're talking about on ESPN. And it's got Showtime, who is supposed to be a showcase for the best fighters in the world. You know, you strive to be on Showtime or HBO. That was the thing of being on that, because that defined you as being among the best in the business. And it's not about now being the best in the business. It's about people crossing over and bringing a fan base with them who spend this money. I don't know on what. Like, there's no more reality to anything in the world. It's like you're endorsing a guy who's not really a fighter yet. He's not a bona fide fighter yet. Yes, he's trained. Yes, he works hard. Yes, he wants to fight. Okay, let's see him rise the way other fighters, when they turn pro, have to rise against other opponents. And we're just not seeing that, and yet they're still able to generate money. That's the part that's making me just crazy, that I can't even wrap my head around it anymore. I don't even know what to think about it anymore. Scully?
Let me tell you what makes me upset. And I think it's a joke. And I try not to even confront it, but it's like, if any guy, even an Olympic champion, the guy who won the Olympics last year, whoever it is, in the middleweight division, if he came out after 5 fights and said, I want to fight Canelo, people wouldn't even give him the time of day. They wouldn't care, because they know it's not realistic. Like, you're not ready for Canelo. You're the Olympic champion and you're 5-0, but you couldn't even spar with Canelo. You're not on that level. This guy can say it. And instead of being laughed at, people like, yeah, he's good. Are you insane? Like, it's not right that he should even be allowed to talk about Canelo. He shouldn't even be allowed to. It's disrespectful for him to even try and put himself on that level. And, I saw a thing. There was a video out a couple months ago, and his team, whoever trains the Paul guy, Jake, or I don't even know if it was Jake or his brother. He was sparring with a guy who,
I was going to say BJ Flores, the former cruiserweight.
Okay, whoever. But they did a video and everybody was allowing this. He sparred with a guy who had no business being in the ring with him. And I guess the guy called him out or something. So everybody was there watching him spar this guy. and it was obvious the guy couldn't fight. Like the guy turned his back and everything. And the Paul guy was beating him up, like and hitting him like even while he wasn't ready. And his team like let it happen. That man, like, could you imagine Eddie Futch being a part of this, or Angelo Dundee? Like it wouldn't happen. Eddie Futch would go, "Hey, what are you guys crazy? Like, I don't want to be a part of this insanity. Like, we're still professional fighters, and I'm a professional trainer, and I can't allow this craziness. It's all about the views and whatever they're looking for. So I don't give credence to it. I don't watch it. I don't pay seriously.
All right, there you go. So that before Ice's Wi-Fi goes out on us, I think we'll conclude. Good recap of 2021. We're mostly looking forward to 2022. Tiras, any final thoughts? Any final comments you want to before we?
I was going to throw something. I'm going to throw something out at you guys, and I know it's coming out without you being ready for it. So I'm going to just throw it out there. Your fighter of the year for 2021.
I think Russ. I'll jump in here. Ice. We have a few minutes left, 2-3 minutes left. I think Canelo deserves it just based on the activity level, the type of results he was able to establish. He did have very good competition. Kambosos will get some. Fury maybe because of but it's really one big win only. So I think it's Canelo.
Yeah, I think the reason I would go with Canelo is because he was super impressive, but he also brought it back to more how it should be. Like, he's an active world champion. Just being an active world champion at that level should draw some attention to show other guys how it's done. So I would lean towards him based on that.
Okay, well, then I'll be the descending vote, and I'm going to go with the guy who beat the unified heavyweight champion of the world in his hometown, in front of 70,000 people against all odds.
Are you biased?
Maybe just a little. Maybe
well,
just
look,
a little.
He's going to get votes. Usyk is right. He's right up there, but the problem is he had one fight. I think that's the problem, though.
But it was a hell of a fight.
100%.
It was a hell of a fight.
And he could be the 2022 fighter of the year if he goes through Joshua and Fury. That would be a heck of an accomplishment. Nobody is going to consider him a big-time underdog anymore. Mr. Anber, Scully, always a pleasure. And Scully, I hope you enjoy the confines of, what is it, Connecticut? Are you back in Connecticut, Florida?
Yes, sir.
There you go. And Tiras, your throat is getting even better, so you're going to be more than okay to yell at us at the office.
Indeed. And let me take this opportunity to wish both of you a great, healthy, and happy new year, and to everyone who watches this. And we hope you enjoyed it. We have fun doing it. We hope you enjoy us having fun doing it and listening to us. So I'll see you guys next year.
All right. Be good.
Take care, everyone.
See you guys.
Beep,
Thank you for tuning in to Calling Russ Anber, everybody. Take care.
All right.